So last week, I finally finished my very first Avatar: The Last Airbender fan animation. Now this project took way longer than I initially planned, but throughout the process of working on this animation, I realized that I had many areas of my workflow that I need to improve on in order to create and finish future projects faster and on time without sacrificing quality. I also realized that I need to do a better job at organizing my projects moving forward, and not just for the project file locations and storage, but how I organize my animation folders for line art, coloring, and backgrounds in Clip Studio Paint. That way I don't have to worry about searching for the shots or folders I need to work on for the day, or accidentally working in one folder when I should be working in another. But the biggest reason this project took as long as it did is simply because of poor planning on my part and letting the scope of the project continue to change mid-production, which is an issue I had to make sure to avoid moving forward. But with all that being said, let's get into all the things I learned from creating my first animated short. Now, I've said in previous videos that I do the majority of my work in Clip Studio Paint, and for this animation, everything was completed using only Clip Studio Paint. And one of the great features Clip Studio has for animation is the option to create multiple shots or cuts using the animation timeline, so you don't have to make multiple project files for different shots for your animation. Now this is a convenient tool to use, but I did run into some issues with how it works overall. Now as far as I know, you can make as many shots as you like using this timeline feature, but the issue I had is when you create an animation folder for the first cut for your rough and tie down and cleanup passes, those same folders will carry over when you create a second cut in the timeline. Now the animation will stay in the first original cut, it won't carry over, but the folders will remain in your layer panel. So if you have an animation with multiple shots with multiple folders for the different passes for the animation, your layer panel will quickly get filled with so many different folders that when you're trying to look for a specific one, it's basically like opening Russian nesting dolls to get to the exact folder you are looking for, which unfortunately can slow down the animation process. So as of right now, I don't believe there's an option to only let the animation folder assigned to a specific cut in the timeline appear while you're currently working on that animated cut. And if there is a way, then somebody please let me know in the comments down below. But for the future, if they found a way to make that happen in Clip Studio, I think that would be very helpful for organizing larger animation projects. Now for the time being, I'm probably going to simply create separate animation files for each shot of my animation projects going forward, because another issue I ran into with using the timeline feature of multiple cuts is the more cuts I added to the animation, when it came time to save the progress I'd made, it would sometimes take a while to save the project, or on very rare occasions, the entire thing would just crash because the file size was just way too big. So to avoid potential crashes and potentially losing hours of work, I believe the safest bet is just to keep the shots in separate files for the time being. One of the most important lessons I learned from this project, and it's honestly something I should have known to avoid going into it, and that was keeping the scope of the project at a reasonable level. This goes into what I said earlier about proper planning, and when it comes to any long ongoing projects for things like video game development, film, and animations, when you start a project, especially if you are solo, a major thing that people always say is to make sure the scope of the project is well defined and manageable, and you should not deviate heavily from the scope that you set. I, however, did not do this when it came to this project, but I'm going to tell you why. So this project is based off a drawing I did a while back of my Avatar original character fighting a wild spirit in the forest. So one day I sketched a few thumbnails for the idea of this animation, and while I was looking through my sketchbook a couple weeks ago, I saw the same thumbnails that I sketched and decided to try and animate it. So I just did it. So originally I never really planned for this animation to be as big as it became, but at the same time I'm glad that it did, because moving forward I will be more prepared to tackle more challenging ideas because of the challenges that I faced with this project. And the initial plan was just to do a quick animatic, then do some rough animation over it, fill out the rough animation with some basic flat colors, and place a simple background underneath, and that was going to be that. But as the project went on, I realized that I didn't really have a full-length animation that was taken all the way to the cleanup stage in my portfolio yet. So I decided that I was going to use this as an opportunity to fill out my animation portfolio with work that reflected my current skill level. But like I said, this was supposed to stay at the rough animation stage. So when I went to do the tie down and the cleanup, I had a lot of mistakes that I need to fix in order to keep the animation consistent, and by that time I had already been working on this project longer than I had any project before it, so I was ready to just finish it and move on. So instead of taking the proper steps of going from rough to tie down to clean, I went straight from rough to cleanup, which caused a whole new host of issues when animating the characters. I had to fix problems as I went along and make major changes to poses in the animation so that it all made sense. And a huge tip for effectively making complex animations is to use references. References are your best friends when animating, whether it be getting inspiration from a scene you saw while watching someone else's animation. And let me clarify, only use other animators' work as inspiration. Do not copy them. Or even recording your own reference. It will help you tremendously while you work, and I did not use this to my advantage. But despite all the challenges and mistakes I made with this project, I still saw it through to the end for the first time, and I'm going to take that as a win. And even though it was rough, I'm already looking forward to starting my next animated project, especially now that I'll be more prepared to tackle the next challenge. And I hope that you guys can learn from my mistakes and hopefully have a more enjoyable time creating your first animated project than I did. Actually, I'm just kidding. I actually did have a good time creating this one. But that's going to be all for this video, and I hope you guys stick around to see the projects I have in store for the future, and I will see you all in the next one.